Good afternoon, everyone. It's Jackie Broman here from TBA Law, and today we've got another special guest webinar for you. So excited to bring Ainsley Judson to you to give you this information, and we've been promoting this for a little while. Ainsley is a financial planner, has been doing that for 20 years and has moved across to become a certified divorce coach as well, and really focusing on making sure that separations and divorce are done well. And so today's topic is the 3 things you must do before telling your spouse you want a divorce. Now, we're recording live. Those of you who are attending live, you can use the Q&A button to ask questions. If it's relevant, we'll raise it straight away, but otherwise we'll answer those questions at the end. Those of you watching the replay, we will share our contact details, so you can contact Ainsley directly or contact me, and we can get your questions answered. So I'm going to hand over to Ainsley, and she's going to share her wisdom with us about how to separate well and what to prepare for to make sure it does happen well. Ainsley.
Thanks, Jackie. And thanks so much for the opportunity to chat to everyone here. And I'm so pleased that you are here, if you're here to find out about how to prepare for a divorce. So as Jackie said, I'm Ainsley Judson. And just before we get started, I want to jump in really quick just to talk to you about how important it is to be well prepared for a divorce. I'm a CDC certified divorce coach and a CDC certified separation and recovery coach. I've trained as a financial transitionist, and I spent over 20 years as a financial advisor to wealthy families. And so in all that time, I really had a front row seat to countless separations and divorces. I've watched people struggle with the emotional roller coaster, that fear and anxiety, the confusing and scary process, and all the decisions. And I've also seen the impact of poor decisions made during this period that results in some serious mistakes, deep regrets, and long-term consequences for everyone involved. So, do you want to know from all my knowledge and experience where you can make the most difference to your separation? Well, it's as early in the process as possible. This is the most influential period, and it can really shape both the separation experience itself as well as the eventual outcomes, including how much it all costs, how much damage is done, and how solid your own internal foundation is when you start your next chapter. So separating is this time when you're going to be making some of the most important financial and legal decisions of your life. And these are decisions that can often be really expensive, if not impossible, to unwind or change down the track. And you'll be making all these high stakes decisions while you're coping with this huge emotional upheaval and understandable anxiety about the future. So it's not an ideal mix. And therefore, the more prepared you are emotionally, mentally, practically, and financially, the more chance you have of getting yourself and your family through this time in a healthy way. So believe me when I say that a healthy divorce is possible, and with the right guidance and the right support. So you can get through this time in a way that you can look back on and be proud of. You can move forward to a brighter and happier new beginning. I've seen this time and time again. I've seen women who are almost paralyzed by fear and uncertainty begin to take steps forward and to eventually build themselves a new life. And I know that you can do this too. You've done hard things before, and I know you can do this. And so today I'm going to share with you some of my top strategies for how to set yourself up for a healthy divorce to protect your kids, your finances, and your future. So let's get into it. So I'm going to show you exactly how you can go from feeling overwhelmed and anxious when you're thinking about and planning for a divorce to feeling clear about your path forward and confident that a healthy divorce is possible with the right guidance and the right support. And by the end of our time together, you're going to know the 3 things that you need to do before telling your spouse you want a divorce. And you really want to get your ducks in a row before you have this conversation, because if your spouse reacts badly to the news, things can go south fast. You might find that your access to information or money is suddenly cut off, and that can leave you feeling really stuck and like you've got limited options. So if you're not prepared before having this conversation, your ducks are still somewhere out on the pond, let alone in a row. So by the end of this masterclass, you're going to know the first vital steps to setting up yourself and your family for a healthy divorce, and ultimately allow you to move forward to a happier new beginning. So one last little bit of housekeeping before we get started, and that is just to let you know that everything I talked to you about today is general information only, and it doesn't constitute any legal, financial, or other professional advice. So divorce is an incredibly difficult and highly emotional time, and it's a time where you really need clarity and a strong support system. Yet many women feel overwhelmed, anxious, and alone. And the predictability and security of most parts of daily life are really shaken to the core during a divorce. Might be from where you live, how much you see your children, what your financial position is like, possibly what you do for work, who you socialize with, and even where you holiday. Divorce is usually the highly emotional ending of a relationship with its own roller coaster of fear and grief and loss, anger, frustration, resentment, and these little sparkles of hope that there could be something better. That alone is enough for anyone to deal with. But then you've got to layer that with all these significant logistical implications and all these high stakes legal and financial decisions that have got these long-term consequences. So it's a lot, and it's no wonder really that divorce is one of the most stressful life events that someone can go through. You know what? It shouldn't be this hard to untangle your lives when you separate. You deserve to be happy and to have a life that you enjoy and to feel like yourself again. So you ready for some good news? Well, I'm here to tell you that a healthy divorce is possible with the right guidance and the right support. And today I'm going to give you my 3 secrets to help you get started on the right path. So many women who are facing divorce tell me that their financial security is the thing that keeps them up at night. And there's a whole host of reasons for this. Women are generally wired for financial security rather than financial risk-taking. And divorce, it really plunges you into this world of unknowns and uncertainty. And it can feel like there's no financial security and that you're also now all on your own trying to figure this out. What are you going to have to start your new life with? What will life cost now that you're on your own? What will you need to earn? What's your lifestyle going to be like? Will you be able to afford to keep the house? What's your financial future look like? What does retirement look like? These are all big, scary questions. And if you haven't had much to do with managing the family money before, then it's no wonder you're probably feeling sick of it all. Every parent worries about their kids, how they're going to cope, what these changes will mean for their happiness, their sense of stability and security, their health and well-being, and their ability to form their own healthy relationships in the future. And it's the way that you go through your divorce, and it's really the amount of conflict between you and your former partner that is the deciding factor here. The higher the conflict, the higher the chances are that your children are going to be negatively affected. During your divorce, you're going to be asked to make life-changing decision after life-changing decision. High-stakes decisions with big implications. And these are decisions that are often difficult or impossible to reverse or change later on. So take it from me, if you're making all these decisions from this place of fear and exhaustion and chaos, it's really hard to be confident that you're making decisions that are going to serve you in the long term. But divorce is not just a legal and financial issue. It's this human experience. It's this transition from one way of life to another. So after 20 years of helping women navigate divorce as a financial advisor, I understand that confusion and overwhelm of planning for an enormous, complex change in your life when there are many things to consider and you know that the road ahead is going to be hard and you're fearful about what the future holds. I've been behind the scenes of countless divorces and separations, and I know how stressful, expensive, and lonely it can all be. And so with my experience in specialist training, I understand what you're going through, and I'm here to help you. So with the right guidance and support, a healthy divorce is possible. With the right guidance and support, you can navigate this challenging time from a place of relative calm and confidence. You can come to grips with your finances and become an independent woman. You can support and protect your children from harm and show them what resilience and grace looks like. You can make good decisions that you won't regret later. You can find a way forwards towards a new life that is more exciting and fulfilling than you ever imagined. You might not see this now, but I've walked shoulder to shoulder with enough women who were where you are now to know with confidence that a happier next chapter is ahead of you. And today you're taking a step towards that brighter new beginning. And there's something else important that I want you to hear and start to think about. If you're in the early stages of separation, you might not be able to see this yet, but I guess let my experience of working with other women just like you inspire you and give you hope. With space and calm, you can actually take advantage of this transitional time, this time between the way that life was and the way that life will be. You can choose to be intentional about designing a new life and who it is that you want to be as you start your next chapter. So let's take a second and imagine what it will feel like when your separation is behind you. Imagine that you're sitting at your kitchen table with a cup of tea and the sunlight streaming through the windows, and your days are full of purpose and the people and things that you love. You feel fulfilled, happy, and also at peace. You've got a few moments of quiet and you think back on your separation and you feel content with both the decisions that you made and proud that you handled yourself with dignity and grace. You have become a resilient, independent woman. Imagine if you had the tools, knowledge, and roadmap to get you from where you are right now, feeling anxious and overwhelmed, to where you want to be, living your new, happier, more peaceful life with enough time and space to explore all the opportunities and possibilities ahead of you. How do you feel? What does it look like? Sounds pretty great, right? So to make good decisions in your divorce, you need to feel confident and not overwhelmed and anxious. To feel confident, you need to feel secure that you have done what needs to be done and protected what needs to be protected. To feel secure and protected, you've got to know what's important and what to do. And to know what is important and what to do, you need guidance and support. You need a separation plan. Now, I'm always going to be honest with you, divorce is complicated and there are times that are going to be really tough. But I can promise you that having guidance and support along the way will always make that path a little smoother. And you don't have to figure this all out on your own. Okay, so if you're anything like me and you want to know where you're going and what's coming next, let me walk you through a quick roadmap of what we're going to cover today so you can know what to expect. So first up, tip number 1, and that is to get educated. When it comes to making good decisions during a separation that you won't regret down the track, one of the most important things you can do is to take a proactive approach. This is your separation, your family, your money, your life. It is you and your family that are going to have to live with these decisions long after your lawyer or mediator has closed their files. Being proactive and taking responsibility to fill in some of the gaps in your knowledge across a whole range of things is going to help you go from feeling overwhelmed and anxious to feeling more confident and in control. I'm not saying you certainly don't need to become a family lawyer or a forensic accountant or a financial planner, but you do need to know enough that when you're making decisions, you're confident that you know what the implications are likely to be and that you can live with them. Your financial and legal advisors will certainly give you advice, but at the end of the day, it needs to be you who makes the decisions. So then we're going to dive into number 2, which is getting prepared practically. And there are definitely things you want to have thought about and planned for before you have the conversation. Getting your ducks in a row, so to speak. So once the news is out, things can move really quickly and in directions that you may not have anticipated. So covering your bases is going to make you feel a whole lot more secure. Next up, we'll walk through why you need to plan the conversation where you deliver your decision to end your marriage. Honestly, this conversation usually goes horribly, and it can do an immense amount of damage. It can set you on a path for a toxic and expensive divorce. This is one of the most difficult conversations you're ever going to have, and you're going to be pretty anxious about it, and so you've got to plan it out. I've put together a free guide. So I'll tell you how to get your hands on that at the end. And then finally, we've got some time for some Q&A. So in the next 15, 20 minutes, these 3 tips are going to help you understand how you can set yourself up for a healthy divorce. So let's dive in. Tip number 1, get educated. So unless this is your second or third divorce, or you work in the space, all the things that come with a separation are likely to be pretty new to you. And the first thing to note is that there is a lot of information and advice floating around in Facebook groups and chat forums, and these aren't strictly accurate, or maybe they won't apply to your situation. Separations are complex, families are complex, and most financial situations have some complexity in them. Every situation, family, separation, is unique. How assets are divided and how arrangements for children are going to be made are going to vary from case to case. Just because your sister got X in her divorce, it doesn't mean you're going to get the same. The other thing to point out here is that the divorce process, the making of financial and parenting decisions, it's not about who deserves what or making someone pay for past bad behaviors. It's about moving forward. You will not get emotional justice from the family law system. So save yourself a lot of money, time, and heartache by understanding that from the outset. Slow down. This is why not rushing things is usually a good idea. It gives yourself and your spouse some time to let those initial emotions settle a little bit. And that will generally mean that you'll be in a better position to make those long-term decisions. It also gives you some time to get organized for the road ahead. The legal pathway. So get educated about the divorce process. There are various ways you can actually work out the finances and your parenting. And the ones that's right for you will be dependent on your situation. Some ways are cheaper, some are more conducive to protecting your ongoing relationships, or some are needed if there is a major power imbalance. So do your homework about the various legal options for navigating the divorce process so that you can choose the best one for your family. Any big life-changing event brings a significant change to our daily lives. It's when we go from the way that life was to the way that life will be. There's this in-between period, this transition. And there is a somewhat predictable pattern of the emotional journey that you go through when you're having a separation. So learning about this can give you some understanding of what you're going through and what to expect. And it'll help you feel like you're actually normal and that you're not going crazy and that you will get through this. Many people I talk to who are getting separated believe that their ex is a narcissist or has a borderline personality disorder. Statistically, that's unlikely to be true. But Sometimes generally good people behave badly, especially when they're fearful or angry. But here's the thing. If your spouse is being difficult to communicate with, or that you're worried that they're really charming and they're going to convince the judge that you're an unfit mother or something equally as devastating, don't tell the judge or your spouse that you think that they're a narcissist. Labeling them without the proper diagnosis always does more harm than good. You can think it all you like, just don't say it or write it. It will harm your case and it can make it even harder to deal with your spouse. Instead, what you need to do is get educated about how to deal with the types of people who are displaying these types of behaviors. Again, they can often be relatively predictable. So there are ways that you can either alter your behavior and communications to make this easier for yourself. There are strategies that you can use that can help you in your divorce process. You really need to get up to speed on this stuff. Get educated on how to support your children as you go through a separation. And depending on their age and maturity, they're going to have different challenges and different needs. And I understand that divorce can feel massively overwhelming and exhausting and all-consuming, but you've got to think about your kids and how what you say affects them. Get them some professional help early and try really hard not to badmouth the other parent in front of them. Knowing your numbers is all about starting to get prepared financially for your separation. So to be able to move forward with confidence, you need to have at least thought about how things are going to work, at least initially, financially. And this is really an essential part of becoming an empowered, independent woman. So I spent over 20 years as a financial advisor, and I've supported countless women as they have navigated a separation right at the beginning when they're planning how to do it, through the negotiation phase, and then out on the other side when it's time to reestablish a solid foundation for their new lives. So I've worked with enough women from a whole range of backgrounds and experience and financial circumstances to know a few underlying truths. For the majority of women, financial security is the number one worry when they go through divorce. And this fear actually transcends wealth brackets. I worked with women who have a financial situation where you'd think, surely they're never going to have to worry about money. And they are absolutely and genuinely terrified that they'd become bag ladies, living on the street with nothing. Women just seem to be wired for financial security. Good news is that this generally makes us better investors than men because we're less likely to engage in financial risk-taking. But the flip side is that when things are uncertain, we're more likely to find it incredibly destabilizing. And of course, add to the fact that for many women, managing the family finances wasn't something that they were responsible for. In any relationship, responsibilities get divided up. And as a huge generalization, managing the money is often done by the man. Or perhaps you were in a relationship where you actually made your decisions together, but now you're being faced with making some pretty enormous financial decisions and you're all on your own about it and you're afraid. So maybe you haven't had a lot of experience with money. Maybe you were told not to worry your pretty little head about it, or that you weren't smart enough to understand it. Not understanding your finances can leave you feeling stuck and afraid. And I'm here to tell you, as someone who's done a lot of work with women who were where you are now, that this is normal. Feeling anxious about your finances, how they'll be worked out in the divorce, and what your financial future's going to be like is totally normal. But I can tell you that the true financial empowerment, that courage to move forward to a better, happier future, comes from taking action and putting a plan together for how you're going to approach your financial future. You can get on top of your finances. With the right guidance and support, you can learn how to manage your money. You are smart enough. You are capable enough. The fact that you're here investing your time in this masterclass means that you're committed to doing the work that it takes to move forward. So I have great faith in you. Okay, so that brings us to secret number 2, which is to get prepared practically. And there are actually a whole host of things that you want to have in place before you have that conversation that kicks the whole thing off. So you need to have set up private and secure methods for communication. You should identify who the people are that need to know what's going on and who you can count on. Ideally, you have a system to safely and efficiently store the likely hundreds of documents that you're going to need to collect before and during your separation. There are also some divorce-specific records you need to start keeping. So preparing practically for your separation, it's a big job and it can definitely feel overwhelming. So breaking it down into manageable bites so that you can do it one step at a time. So there's 2 initial steps that I work with women who are right at the beginning of their separation, and I'm going to share them with you now. Step 1 is to make sure that you have access to some money in your own name. Money that you control and that ideally no one else, i.e. your spouse, has access to or visibility over. Preparing for a separation means that you're going to have to take some initial steps that will probably cost money. This might be getting some preliminary legal advice or investing in a program for support and guidance. So depending on your situation, you may not want to have evidence of your separation preparation on your joint bank accounts. So if you don't already have one, setting up a new account in your own name can be a very empowering first step towards your independence. Top tip is to do this at a bank or an institution that's different to the one where you do your other family banking, so that it's not automatically added to any existing online banking details, which many couples share. And then you can get to work on growing your independence account. Perhaps you've got some cash you can deposit. You might be able to sell some things that you don't need. You can direct part of your salary into the account. You might need to get a bit scrappy here, and it might take some time. But if you want something enough, I know that you're going to find a way to make it work. And just so you know, you're not doing anything wrong. You're absolutely in your rights to have a bank account in your own name. You're not hiding money, as this account will need to be disclosed as part of the divorce process eventually, but it will give you some much needed independence in these early stages. So steps 2 is to start thinking about where you are financially at the moment. What do you own and owe as a couple? What does life cost? And what might it cost when you're on your own? Doing this initial work early and getting your head around it can really help put your mind at ease and relieve some of the anxiety that you have about your financial security for that first few months of your separation. It is always better to know than to not know. Importantly, having a good grasp of your financial situation can help give you really some much needed context and confidence for all the decisions you're going to need to make as you navigate your divorce. So now that you know how important it is to get educated and plan practically for what's coming, it's time to learn about how you're going to start this whole process. And this brings us to secret number 3. Plan the conversation where you'll be telling your husband that you've decided that you'll be getting a divorce. So I'm going to walk you through why this conversation is so incredibly crucial and why you need to plan ahead of time so that you've got the best chance of handling this as well as you can. Before we get into this, I just want to address your safety. Leaving your marriage is the most dangerous time for a woman. So if you are at all concerned about your physical or financial safety, then there's some additional precautions and steps that you need to take. If you believe there's a good chance that they might get physically or financially aggressive, and you know your spouse better than anyone, and how they've acted in the past is a good indicator of how they might handle this, then I don't recommend having this conversation face-to-face. Your plans will need to be different and ideally include the help of experienced specialists such as a local domestic violence centre. So assuming that you feel safe to have this conversation, let's move on. Telling your spouse that you want to end your marriage will be one of the most difficult and the most vitally important conversations that you ever have. So much depends on how you handle this conversation, as it can really set the tone and the course for the rest of the divorce process and for your future relationship as co-parents. You really only get one shot at this, and getting it wrong can add a lot of toxicity and send you off on an emotionally draining and financially devastating path. If you want a respectful and amicable separation and future relationship, then you've got to start this process in a way that is respectful. A text message, leaving a Dear John note on the kitchen bench while you leave with the kids, or screaming it out in the middle of an argument is not respectful. To have the best chance of having a respectful and amicable divorce, you need to start it in that way. And to have the best chance of doing that, you're going to have a plan for how you're going to approach this conversation. You need to think about the logistics of the conversation, the when, where, how, and who. You want to be having this conversation at the right time, in the right place, in the right way, and with the right people present. You want to have clear goals for your conversation. You want to have prepared both what you're going to say and what you're not going to say, and how you're going to respond to his potential reactions. Even with all the planning in the world, you cannot control how your spouse will react. We can, however, plan for how they might react, because if you've planned for something and then it happens, you won't be as surprised. And if you've got a better chance of sticking to your own plans, because you're not scrambling so much to think about what to do next in the heat of the moment, because you're going to be anxious and your own capacity for thinking clearly will be reduced. So plan ahead for when that happens. Remember that you can only control how you approach this. And when you go to bed that night, you want to feel like you did the best that you could. You want to keep your side of the street clean and behave in a way that you can look back on and feel like you did that as well as you could. So by creating a well thought out plan for this conversation, you will have done everything you can to create an environment for a non-combative reaction. And even if they have a big reaction, well, you've done your part. You've done everything in your power to set this up for as well as it could go. And I want you to know that despite the planning, you'll probably still feel like you've screwed it up. That's okay. No one does this perfectly. But I promise you that without a plan, it probably would have gone a whole lot worse. So you also want to think about the best way to support yourself, both before and after you have this crucial conversation. It's important for you to realize that as you're approaching this, you actually have an emotional head start, because you're able to prepare and plan for this conversation. You get to plan for it and think it through. You've got this chance to think about what their potential response is going to be, and then plan for how you might handle them. You're also the initiator, and you're further along the emotional journey of the separation than your spouse is. For you, the gains of a separation and your hopes for a brighter future probably now outweigh the losses. So remember that for your spouse, this will be the first time that they hear this. And depending on what your relationship's been like, their reaction could range from resignation to total shock. If they're completely surprised by your announcement, then know that this is going to create this massive resistance. And it's going to require some time for them to adapt to this news. For them, the news of a divorce will only be about the losses. They haven't yet had that time to think about how this might be better. So total shock and fear of what a divorce is going to mean will trigger this massive fight or flight reaction. Even if you've tossed this around before, once you have that conversation and they know that you mean it, their brain is going to start pumping out the cortisol and the stress hormones, and they very truly cannot think clearly. So expect this, plan for this, and be compassionate. Be compassionate and understanding both about how they're going to react, because it's their primitive brain taking over, which they have no control over. And also because regardless of the reasons or the story behind why the relationship is no longer working, there is reaction in saying our marriage is over and we're getting a divorce. You're the one in this conversation that is doing the rejecting, so try to be gracious and compassionate. Preparing early for your separation by getting educated, getting prepared practically, and then planning how you're going to deliver your decision will help you set the tone and the direction for your whole divorce. I like to say that you can be both hopeful and optimistic for the best, while also being smart and prepared for the worst. So, how will you get prepared for your separation? While you're dealing with the emotional roller coaster, the worries about your financial security, how your kids are going to cope, it's easy to overlook areas that you might not have even thought about. It can also be difficult to get the information that you want and need, and to put together a solid plan that you can feel confident about. Googling until the wee hours can make you feel even more anxious, and it can be easy to fall down the rabbit holes. And you can't even be sure that a lot of the information is correct, or what order to do everything, or more scarily, what you've missed that may come back to blindside you later on. I worked with enough women who were where you are now to have an educated guess about what you want. You want to do your best to set the tone for a respectful and amicable separation that doesn't take years, doesn't cost a fortune, and does the least amount of damage to everyone involved. But you also want to be smart and to protect your flanks. You know that divorces can get messy, and good people can do bad things when they're fearful. So you also want to do the best to protect your kids, your finances, and your future. How am I going? Close enough? I also know that you're probably afraid. Telling your spouse that you want a divorce is incredibly difficult and incredibly crucial. It's got to be handled very carefully. Get it wrong, and it can start you off on a path to a devastating and cripplingly expensive divorce. Not having a plan means that you don't know what to expect or even what to look out for, and that can really make you feel stuck and anxious. Having a well thought out, considered plan for your separation does a few things. It relieves the confusion about what to focus on next. It means that you can move into the process in your own time rather than feeling rushed and panicky. It means you can be responsive rather than reactive. This will help you make your decisions with more confidence, knowing that you're less likely to regret them later on. You can give yourself a head start and prepare yourself emotionally, mentally, practically, legally, and financially. It allows you to protect yourself and your children and your finances and your future. So have I convinced you that you need to have a plan for this? Good. So to help you get started on this journey, I've put together a free guide, which you can get at ainsleyjudson.com/divorce guide. And I think Jackie will drop that in the chat. So go and grab a copy of that. So here we are, my friends. We've made it all the way to the end. I really want to thank you for joining me today, and I'm so grateful that you chose to come to this masterclass, and I hope that it was valuable. Thank you also, Jackie, for the opportunity to talk to your group today, and so I'll hand back to you for now.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. So useful. And you just hit on so many things that, particularly when someone comes to a lawyer, we gloss over these things because the emotional stuff, is so tricky. And, we have a role to play with being an advocate. So to be able to have the extra support of a divorce coach can, I think, just be game changing. So again, thank you. And for those who are live, we'll stop the recording so we can answer your Q&As, and so you won't be on the recording. For anyone who watches the replay and those watching the replay, again, Ainsley, do you want to go back a step to your...
Oh, that's got the...
Perfect. Yeah, so people can find you there and they can get in contact with you through your website. And of course, if anyone wants to email me, I can also pass on the link for that guide, and also contact details as well for Ainsley if you want those. So thank you again so much. Yes, we'll stop the recording and answer some questions.